Hey everybody, welcome to DadsDen, pop culture. The mid to late 60s were loaded with TV shows that would be later considered classic. Many of these shows would end up in syndication, and they often drew a large audience of kids. One of those shows is I Dream of Jeannie. Premiered in 1965, produced by Screen Gems, told the story of a 2,000-year-old Jeannie named Jeannie, found by a NASA astronaut, played by Larry Hagman, on the beach of a deserted island. Hijinks ensued, introduced, to some degree, Barbara Eden to the wider American viewing public. Now, since it was really popular with kids, and since it already had a little bit of an animated opening, it was a natural for Screen Gems to eventually team up with Hanna-Barbera in 1973 to produce an animated cartoon with the same basic concept, although altered for the Saturday morning audience. The show was developed by Sidney Morse and directed by Charles August Nichols. Now, TV to Saturday morning conversions were not rare, and Jeannie was probably one of the closest of them to the original material. Next, maybe to the awesome Filmation Star Trek cartoon, which was also from 1973. Usually the concept was changed pretty drastically. Hanna-Barbera sent the Partridge Family to the future. Hanna-Barbera also had Fonzie do some time traveling with the Happy Days gang. And Gilligan's Planet sent Gilligan and the castaways into outer space, although it was a sequel to a more accurate New Adventures of Gilligan cartoon, both done by Filmation. Laverne and Shirley wound up in the Army. But basically, if a show had found a lot of popularity among kids, that made it grist for the Saturday morning cartoon mill. They were always looking for a property that was going to appeal to kids, even if the show wasn't going to be very long, very many episodes. Remember, at this point, for most of these, they weren't at the point where they could make the cartoons based on toy lines. That was against the law, basically. They were going to open things up a little bit at a later date. You get G.I. Joe, Transformers, He-Man, etc. So basically, they were always looking for a property that was popular with kids that they could turn into something new for Saturday mornings. Now, we don't really know how old the animated Jeannie is, maybe 2,000 years old, who knows, but she appears as a 16-year-old girl. She is found by teenager Corey Anders, who discovers her bottle on the beach in Southern California while he is surfing. Now, as with the original Jeannie, she gets herself involved in Corey's life, often to his regret. This is compounded by her junior Jeannie in training, Babu, who does appear to be older than her, just not being able to perform magic particularly well. Jeannie gets a little bit of a redesign for the show, of course. Not quite as curvaceous as Barbara Eden, for example, and a redhead instead of a blonde. And unlike the original, her magic powers work via her ponytail rather than by blinking. Now, while only 16 episodes were made, the show aired for a couple years between 1973 and 1975. Repetition didn't really bug kids back in the day, and I don't think it really bugs them now. And we didn't have, of course, VHS or DVD or streaming, so, you saw it on Saturday mornings, and that was pretty much it. It was included in a Wheel series called Fred Flintstone and Friends in 1977 as well, and that's probably when I first saw it as a kid. And Jeannie and her friends appeared in one of the new Scooby-Doo movies. Now, that was in 73, back when the show was brand new. Jeannie is voiced by Julie McWhirter. Great voice, by the way. And although she doesn't really sound like a 16-year-old girl, she sells the character pretty darn well. Kind of makes her seem wise beyond her years. Corey is voiced by Mark Hamill. Yeah, that Luke Skywalker guy, in his first voice acting gig. Corey's best friend, Henry Glubb, is voiced by Bob Hastings, a veteran of TV, both live action and animated. Did tons of stuff. Look him up on IMDb, and you will see. Baboo is voiced by the great Joe Besser. Folks, if you have only ever seen him with the Three Stooges, you have missed out. He was hilarious and absolutely bizarre as Stinky on the Abott and Costello TV show, and he did lots of movies and did some sort of short subjects of his own that are actually pretty darn funny, funnier than what he did with the Three Stooges. The show is basically an animated sitcom. Corey is involved in some kind of activity. Jeannie and Baboo get involved trying to help him, and everything goes crazy. Things are complicated by the need to hide Jeannie and Baboo's true natures, which they don't always help with all that much, and by Jeannie being jealous of Corey's attentions to other girls, which is very much like what we got in the I Dream of Jeannie. Eventually, of course, since it's a sitcom, everything gets sorted out and everybody remains pals. Now, a further complication in a few episodes is S. Melvin Farthingale. They usually refer to him as Smelly or Smelvin. No, it's S. Melvin. He's kind of the local snotty rich kid who bedevils our middle-class hero. You got a lot of these in cartoons at the time, actually in movies at the time too. Now, unlike many Hanna-Barbera shows at the time, it is not a Scooby-Doo clone. The kids aren't out trying to solve crimes and facing monsters and real villains. Episode 1 involves a jealous Jeannie trying to sabotage Corey being in a surf contest with a girl by stealing his math exam paper. Corey and Henry try to ditch Jeannie in episode 3 so they could work at a ski resort and date girls. Naturally, it doesn't go the way they planned as Jeannie and Baboo show up and get involved. Episode 5 has a jealous Jeannie changing her look to compete with another girl, and in the process losing her ponytail and thus her powers. She actually stole a motorcycle and went to a salon for that. It really wasn't worth the effort. Her identity is discovered in episode 10 of The Kid Brother, when Corey babysits the younger brother of a friend named Linda. A few episodes involve time travel, again, often done on the old I Dream of Jeannie series. Helen of Troy visits in episode 8, which obviously Jeannie's not real thrilled about the most beautiful woman in the world visiting Corey. Another callback to the TV show has Great Haji assigning Jeannie to take care of his dog. You might remember that Jeannie had an often invisible dog in the original series, so, a little bit different, but you get the idea. Episode 16, the final episode, is one of those mind switch ones, a classic TV trope, because Henry is feeling down since Corey's the big sports hero, and Jeannie switches their minds so he can see what it's like to be the big man on campus for a while. For kids, the show works pretty well. The animation and voice work is pretty good, and this wasn't always the case with Hanna-Barbera shows at the time. Now remember, it was written for kids and not adults. Are adults going to find the situations as funny as kids? Probably not. But when I was a kid and I saw the show, I remember thinking it was pretty damn funny. The crossover with Scooby-Doo and the new Scooby-Doo movies entitled Mystery in Persia ran September 22nd, 1973. It was the same day as Jeannie's third episode, The Great Ski Robbery, which we mentioned a couple of minutes ago. I don't know if I would have seen it in 73. I would have been very, very young. If I did, I wouldn't have remembered it. I probably saw, like I said, either a rerun of this episode or during that wheel show in 77. I would have been 5 then. And of course, Baboo was on the Laff-a-Lympics, although not Jeannie. Now that's recently shown up on Tubi, and I started watching it confident that Jeannie was on the show as well, because I was absolutely sure I remembered her there. And I was wrong. It tells you what memories will do over the course of 40 years. Okay. Now, the negative stuff that I've heard about the Jeannie show seems to not grasp that it was, in fact, made for children and was a comedy. In other words, don't overthink it. It was not intended to be a remake of the live-action original, and it was not intended to make some big social statement. It was a simple sitcom for kids. Now, if you approach it with this in mind, it's a pretty enjoyable little animated cartoon, especially if you're a kid. It's not unlike the kind of stuff you would find on the Disney Channel and Nickelodeon back in the day, like Hannah Montana, Wizards of Waverly Place, iCarly, that kind of stuff. Now, beyond the nostalgia factor, there's probably not a lot in this cartoon to recommend to adults. If it's something you remember from childhood, you might like it. But if you're just looking for something that is, I don't know, brightly colored, fairly inoffensive, you're a Mark Hamill fan, you might get something out of this one. It's a decent cartoon. Maybe it's not one of the great classics. It is streaming on Amazon Prime. Of course, you'd have to have a Prime membership to see it. Otherwise, it's pretty difficult to find. And that's probably because it is a co-op between Screen Gems and Hanna-Barbera. So who owns what? I think that's why only Babu, who was created for this cartoon, was able to be used later in Laff-a-Lympics. But there you go, folks. Jeannie from 1973, a fun little animated sitcom based on I Dream of Jeannie. Let me know in the comments what you think of this one, if you remember it from your childhood or maybe from later on. Love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe, share with a friend. That would be very cool. But until next time, God bless everybody. Please be kind to one another. Have a little bit of fun out there. And I will see you hopefully again soon in Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Bye-bye.